Hey guys, welcome to our reading lesson. Let's get started by reading our learning target. I can understand differences in the points of view of characters in a story. So let's talk about some things that we know. Let's start with characters. What is a character? Person, animal, or made-up creature that is inside the story. Give me an example of a character in a story that you've read. All right, Goldilocks, Skip and Fliss, The Cat in the Hat. Okay, those are all characters. It's who the story is about. Now let's talk about that word story. Story it's made up. It does not teach us real true facts. In a story though, we have a beginning, a middle, and an end. We have a problem and a solution, and we usually are able to learn something from a story, okay? All right, and then we have a point of view. Point of view is a new word for us this week because we are trying to understand and find the points of view of characters. So we need to know what a point of view is. A point of view is the perspective in which the text is written, or the perspective of a character in the story, which is what they think, feel, or the way that a character acts. That's their point of view, okay? Something that can help us, remember I told you that a point of view is how the character thinks, feels, or acts. We can find out this information from the dialogue that the character says. So a dialogue is the words that the characters say in a story or in a play. Give me an example of some dialogue from a character that you know. Okay, the things that the big bad wolf says is a type of dialogue. The things that the little pig say, right? Not by the hair on my chinny chin chin, all the things that the characters can say. Usually dialogue is found in quotation marks. That's those little marks like this that are around the words, okay? That is the dialogue. Now, we read yesterday the story of the squirrel and the crow. This is a folk tale, which means that it was passed on from generation to generation by word of mouth, and then somebody decided to take that folk tale and write it down. Folk tales do have a beginning, a middle, and an end. They do have a problem and a solution, and they teach us a lesson. In this story, the crow learns a lesson, and he even states the lesson that he learned. Sometimes folk tales and fables will state the lesson that they learned, but that's not always true. Sometimes we have to gather the things that we read about, and determine the meaning ourselves, okay? All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go through and reread The Squirrel and the Crow before we move on to doing looking over our questions that you were supposed to answer yesterday. All right, we're going to start today by rereading the story of The Squirrel and the Crow. Take your helper finger and put it on paragraph number 1, word number 1. It's very important that you track print, okay? Once upon a time, a crow and a squirrel owned a field. They agreed to work the field together. One day, the squirrel called out to the crow, "Come, brother crow, it's time to plow the field." The crow was lazy. He stretched his left wing and his left arm, then said, "Sister dear, do go on ahead. I will follow soon. I'll eat this piece of buttered bread and be with you by noon." The squirrel plowed the field all day. Meanwhile, the crow enjoyed a cool breeze that blew through the trees. A few days later, the squirrel called out to the crow, "Come, brother crow, it is time to plant the seeds." The crow opened one eye and said, "Sister dear, do go ahead. I will follow soon. I'll eat this piece of buttered bread and be with you by noon." The little squirrel planted seeds all by herself. Rain fell, and before long, all the seeds had sprouted. Soon, every stalk had fat ears of wheat. "Come, brother crow," called the squirrel. "It is time to harvest the grain." But the crow settled himself in his nest. Let's look at that word harvest. Harvest means the time of gathering in the crops. So now that their crop has grown, it's time to harvest it or gather it in. We're on paragraph number 5. The squirrel cut down the wheat. Soon there were piles of golden grain waiting to be put into stacks. All right, now we're going to turn the page to finish the rest of this folktale. Paragraph number 6 is on page 280. Ready? Read. The squirrel took the grain to the market. She came home with a big silken bag jingling with money. The crow heard the sound of the money and sat up. Come, Sister Squirrel, he called greedily. Let us count and divide the money so I can take my share. The little squirrel dropped the bag into her nest and turned to the crow. Smiling her sweetest smile, she said, Brother Crow, there is no share for lazy birds like you. When all your buttered bread is gone, you'll wish you had worked too. The squirrel flicked her tail and vanished into her nest. The crow sat on his branch, feeling very silly. All right, so now let's go ahead and let's look at the questions. So we're going to look at the questions on page 281. Question number 1. Which sentence best describes the squirrel's point of view about working in the fields? A, she prefers to do the work herself. B, she enjoys plowing and planting. C, it is hard work, but it has to be done. D, she only works when she wants to work. So let's think about the squirrel's point of view. If we go back in the text, remember to find point of view, we're looking for how they think, how they feel, the actions that they take. So we need to find the dialogue of the squirrel. That's what the squirrel is saying. So let's look in paragraph number 1. The dialogue of the squirrel is in the middle of that paragraph. One day, the squirrel called out to the crow, Come, Brother Crow, it is time to plow the field. All right. Then we look in paragraph number 3. A few days later, the squirrel called out to the crow, Come, Brother Crow, it is time to plant the seeds. Then what did the squirrel do? She planted the seeds herself. Then she said in paragraph number 4, Come, Brother Crow, called the squirrel, it is time to harvest the grain. Okay? So what is the crow doing? The squirrel is telling the crow, hey, let's go do this to get the field ready. Let's go do this to get the field ready. Let's go do this to get the field ready. So the squirrel is trying to get the field ready to have their to have something to harvest to make some money on. So do you think that her point of view is that she prefers to do the work herself? She wants to do the work herself. Do you think that that's her point of view? If that was her point of view, would she have even asked the crow to help? No. She enjoys plowing and planting. Now, it said that she did plow and plant, but is it mentioning that she's enjoying that? No. See, it is hard work, but it has to be done. Is that true? She knows she has work to do so that she can have that money at the end. So let's put a star beside that and we'll come back and make sure that there's not another choice that might answer it best. D, she works only when she wants to work. Is that true about the squirrel? No, so D is not correct. So C is the correct answer. It is hard work, but she knows that it has to be done. Good job. All right, number 2. What is the crow's point of view about hard work? Let others do the work, but all must share the results. Be sure you're well rested before you work. Share the work and share the results. A good friend is always happy to do the work for you. So think about Crow's point of view, how Crow thinks, how Crow feels, the actions, and then we can look at the dialogue to get more information. So let's go back in our text to page 278, and let's reread the Crow's dialogue. Paragraph number 1. Sister dear, do go on ahead. I will follow soon. I'll eat this piece of buttered bread and be with you by noon. Then again in paragraph 3. Sister dear, do go on ahead. I will follow soon. I'll eat this piece of buttered bread and be with you by noon. Okay, so what is the crow doing? Is the crow offering to help? No, she's telling the squirrel to go and do it, and oh, she'll be there to help, right? So there's a couple of things that we can already mark off. Be sure you're well rested before you work. Crow never even did any work, okay? C, share the work and share the results. Did Crow ever do any work? She didn't share it. She made the squirrel do it all. Let's look at A. Let others do the work, but all must share the results. Is that the way that Crow felt? When we looked at page 280, paragraph number 7, come, Sister Squirrel, he called greedily. Let us count and divide the money so I can take my share. We know that the crow never did any work, but now the crow wants the money. That one is a good choice, but let's make sure that D is not a better choice. A good friend is always happy to do the work for you. Did you think that Crow didn't even do any work, right? So that one cannot be it. Crow's point of view was that he didn't want to do the work, but he wanted the result. He wanted that money at the end. So A is the crow's point of view. All right, number 3. It says it has 2 parts. First answer part A, then answer part B. Part A says, underline the sentence that tells the squirrel's feelings about what the crow deserves. So remember, this line comes at the end. The squirrel is ask the crow to help, ask the crow to help, ask the crow to help. The crow is not helping, not helping, not helping. So this is what the crow says back. The squirrel says back to the crow. Brother Crow, there is no share for lazy birds like you. When all your buttered bread is gone, you'll wish you had worked too. So here, our squirrel has a point of view. What sentences let us know the squirrel's point of view? She says there's no share for lazy birds like you. Okay? So it says, tell what the sentence you marked in part A means. There is no share for lazy birds like you. If you don't work, then you don't get the results, right? No work equals no results or reward, right? Okay? All right, let's go ahead and let's continue going. Okay, let's look at question number 4. Read these lines from the story. Come, Sister Squirrel, he called greedily. Let us count and divide the money so I can take my share. Underline the dictionary definition in the box below that best matches this use of the word share. Okay? All right, so share is that word that he used in that last word. Come, Sister Squirrel, he called greedily. Let us come and divide the money so I can take my share. Share is a multiple meaning word. Share can be a verb meaning to have or use something with others, to share toys, or to talk about with others, to share your feelings. Share can also be a noun, a part of something that has been divided equally, a share of the prize, or the amount you are responsible for, your share of the work. Okay? So what share is being talked about in this sentence? Let us count and divide the money so I can take my share. You're supposed to underline the definition that it's talking about. Come so I can take my share. So remember in the story, the squirrel has done all the work. Planted, harvested, and now has the money. Crow didn't do anything, but now wants some of the money. So does share mean in this sentence to have or use something with others, like to share toys? That's not the share that's being talked about here in this sentence. To talk about with others, are they sharing their feelings or talking about the share? No. A part of something that has been divided equally. All right, let's read the last one. The amount you are responsible for, your share of the work. Here, we're talking about divide the money so I can take my share, or I can take the part that belongs to me. It's the share of the prizes, so the part that belongs to me. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and let's go and check number 5 and 6. All right, so it says, the question that we're trying to answer here is the squirrel and the crow have different points of view about the money. How are they different? So we want to know how squirrel and crow's point of view is different about the money. So we're going to plan our response. In the story, underline one sentence that tells the squirrel's point of view, then underline a sentence that tells the crow's point of view. So let's do that first. So go back in your text to page number 280, and let's reread page number 280. The squirrel took the grain to the market. She came home with a big silken bag jingling with money. The crow heard the sound of the money and sat up. Come, Sister Squirrel, he called greedily. Let us count and divide the money so I can take my share. That's the dialogue of the crow, right? That's how the crow feels about the money. What does the crow think about the money? That they should count and divide the money so that he can take his share or his part, right? All right, paragraph number 8. The little squirrel dropped the bag into her nest and turned to the crow. Smiling her sweetest smile, she said, Brother Crow, there is no share for lazy birds like you. When all your buttered bread is gone, you'll wish you had worked too. So what is the crow's point of view here? I'm sorry, the squirrel's point of view here. What does the squirrel say to the crow? Brother Crow, there is no share for lazy birds like you. It also tells us in paragraph 8 that she dropped the bag into her nest. So those two sentences tell us about the squirrel and the crow. The second part of the plan your response wants you to create a graphic organizer. So what I encourage you to do, I know there's not much room on these pages, but just over on the side, or maybe if you got out a new sheet of paper, it wants us to create a graphic organizer with our character squirrel. And then with our character crow. It wants us to find their point of view based on those sentences that we underlined. So let's start with the squirrel. The squirrel said, there is no share for lazy birds like you. And remember, she dropped the money bag into her nest. So how does the squirrel feel or think about this situation? The squirrel basically thinks her point of view is, if you don't work, you don't get the reward, right? So the squirrel's point of view is you have to work for your reward or prize, right? Okay? But the crow said, let us count and divide the money so I can take my share. So what's the crow's point of view about the money? The crow's point of view is that you don't have to do any work, but you still get something out of it, right? So the crow thinks point of view is no work, but still share the reward. Those points of view are different, aren't they? Whose point of view do you feel like you can relate to, the squirrels or the crows? All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to take this and we are going to write our short response, okay? So it says, how is the squirrel's point of view about the money she brings home different from the crow's point of view? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to restate our question. Squirrel's point of view is different than crow's. All right. Now we need to answer that question, okay? So we've restated it. Crow's point of view is different than squirrel's point of view is different than crow's. Now we need to answer it. We need to tell how it's different, okay? So squirrel's point of view is that, remember we talked about if you have to work for your reward. So her point of view is that if you work, you get the money. But if you don't work, you don't get the money. Okay? All right, well, what about Crow's point of view? Crow's point of view is that you don't have to work, but you still get the reward or you get the money, right? So Crow thinks that he deserves the money, even though he did no work. On the in the field. Let's not say on. In the field. All right, so let's go back and let's make sure that we have this question answered. The question says, how is the squirrel's point of view about the money she brings home different from the crow's point of view? Squirrel's point of view is different than crow's. Squirrel's point of view is that if you work, you get the money, but if you don't work, you don't get the money. Crow thinks that he deserves the money, even though he did no work in the field. All right, guys. So remember, as we find these points of view, when we go back and reread the text, we should be able to read the dialogue based on the point of view of the character. So we should be able to change our voice. So how do you think that the squirrel's voice sounds when he's asking the crow to help? You think it's kind of like persistent, like he's asking. So back in paragraph number 1, come, Brother Crow, it's time to plow the field. It's kind of like he's begging him, right? He's pleading for him. Please come and help. Please come and help. How do you think that the crow's voice sounds based on the crow's point of view? Yeah, very laid back, like, oh, it's no big deal, right? So this is probably what it would sound like in paragraph number 1. Sister dear, do go ahead. I will follow soon. I'll eat this piece of buttered bread and be with you by noon, right? It has a more relaxed feeling to it than the squirrel who wants to get done and wants to harvest the grain, right? All right, guys, make sure that as you are reading during your independent time or you come across a new text that you are putting these skills into practice there. As we read with expression, it helps us to be better comprehenders and understand what we're reading.